Welcome to our channel. Today, we pause to remember a life that touched hearts and left a lasting impact. We'll explore their journey, the challenges they faced, and the moments that made them unforgettable. Join us as we honor their story, celebrate their legacy, and reflect on the memories that will continue to inspire and live on in the hearts of those who knew them. The news arrived quietly, carried not by sirens or spectacle, but by a simple confirmation that marked the end of an era. Sonny Jurgensen had passed away. For many, it felt like a Sunday tradition had finally gone silent. The man whose arm once filled stadiums with anticipation was now being remembered in stillness, with gratitude and reflection. Christian Adolf Sonny Jurgensen III was born in 1934, in a time when football was still finding its modern shape. From an early age, he showed a rare calm under pressure. That calm would become his signature. At Duke University, he stood out not only for his talent, but for his understanding of the game. Teammates often said he saw the field differently, as if time moved slower for him. When he entered the National Football League, Jurgensen brought that same clarity with him. He played for 18 seasons, an uncommon length even by today's standards. Most of those years were spent with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Redskins, teams that came to rely on his steady leadership. He was not the loudest voice in the huddle, but he was always the most trusted. On the field, Jurgensen was known for his accuracy and fearlessness. He threw into tight spaces without hesitation. He stayed in the pocket when others would scramble away. His style was not flashy, but it was effective. Season after season, he delivered performances that earned respect from teammates and opponents alike. Statistics tell part of the story. Passing titles. Pro Bowl selections. Records that stood for years. But those numbers never fully captured his presence. What mattered most was how he played the game. With patience. With confidence. And with a deep respect for the sport itself. Former teammates often spoke of his toughness. Injuries never seemed to change his approach. Sonny never flinched, one former teammate recalled. You always felt like the game was under control when he was out there. That sense of control became a defining trait of his career. In 1983, Jurgensen was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The honor recognized not just his talent, but his influence on the position of quarterback. By then, his place in football history was already secure. Yet even after leaving the field, he was not finished contributing to the game he loved. For many fans, a different version of Sonny Jurgensen became just as familiar. In the broadcast booth, his voice guided listeners through countless games. As a longtime radio color commentator for Washington, he offered insight without ego. He explained plays with clarity and honesty, always mindful of the audience listening at home. He taught you football without making you feel lost, a longtime listener once wrote online. You felt like you were sitting next to him, learning the game. That ability to connect became one of his greatest strengths off the field. Jurgensen never chased attention in his later years. He preferred conversation to ceremony. He spoke often about teamwork and preparation, rarely about himself. Those close to him said he remained humble, even as fans continued to thank him for decades of memories. After news of his passing, tributes began to appear across social media and sports communities. Former players, broadcasters, and fans shared stories of games watched with family, of Sundays shaped by his performances. One message read simply, "Sonny Jurgensen made football feel personal. He was part of our lives." His family released a brief statement, thanking fans for their support and remembering him as a devoted husband, father, and friend. Football was his passion, the statement said, but people were always his priority. It was a reminder that behind the legend was a man grounded in relationships and respect. As the years pass, highlights will continue to play. Old broadcasts will still be heard. Young fans may learn his name through history books or stories told by parents and grandparents. In that way, Sonny Jurgensen remains present. He will be remembered as a quarterback who played with courage, as a broadcaster who spoke with care, and as a steady figure in a game often defined by change. More than anything, he will be remembered for making Sundays matter. And in the quiet moments of reflection, his legacy continues to echo, calm, enduring, and deeply respected. The news was confirmed in a quiet way, without fanfare or flashing headlines. Herman Lamonte McLemore had passed away. For many, the moment felt gentle but heavy, like the final note of a familiar song slowly fading into silence. His name was not always spoken first, but his presence was always felt. McLemore was best known as a founding member of the Fifth Dimension, a group whose sound helped define an era of American music. Their harmonies were smooth, hopeful, and carefully crafted. Songs filled with light and balance found their way into homes, radios, and shared memories. Behind those voices was a man who believed in blending rather than standing apart. Born with a deep love for music, McLemore understood early that harmony required trust. In the Fifth Dimension, no single voice was meant to overpower another. Each member carried part of the sound, and McLemore embraced that role with quiet pride. He was not chasing the spotlight. He was helping create something that lasted. The group's success came during a time of change in American culture. Their music crossed boundaries and brought people together. On stage and in studio sessions, McLemore was known for his focus and calm nature. Those close to the group often said he listened more than he spoke, but when he did speak, it mattered. Beyond music, McLemore's creative life continued to expand. He explored acting, composition, and photography, always guided by curiosity rather than fame. Friends described him as thoughtful and observant, someone who noticed small details others often missed. Creativity, for him, was not a career move. It was a way of seeing the world. As years passed, McLemore stepped further away from public attention. He chose a quieter path, one that allowed space for reflection and personal growth. Even then, his work continued to influence new listeners who discovered the Fifth Dimension through classic playlists and family collections. The music endured, even as the spotlight shifted. Following news of his passing, tributes began to appear from fans and fellow artists. One longtime listener wrote online, "His voice helped shape moments of peace in my life. I didn't know his name as a child, but I knew the feeling." That feeling, many said, was warmth and balance. A former collaborator shared a short message, saying, "Herman believed in harmony as a human value, not just a musical one." The words reflected how he approached both art and relationships. He valued cooperation, patience, and shared purpose. Family members remembered him as gentle and deeply committed to his loved ones. In a brief statement, they said he lived a life rooted in creativity and kindness. He found joy in creating with others, the statement read. That joy stayed with him until the end. McLemore's contributions may not always be highlighted in bold headlines, but they remain present in the sound that defined a generation. His work reminds listeners that music is not only about voices rising above the rest. It is about voices coming together. As time moves forward, his legacy continues in quiet ways. In songs that still play. In harmonies that still feel whole. In the reminder that lasting impact does not always come from being seen, but from being felt. Herman Lamonte McLemore leaves behind a life shaped by balance, creativity, and respect for collaboration. His harmony lives on, not only in music, but in memory. And as those familiar melodies return, his presence remains, steady, gentle, and timeless. The news was confirmed without noise or ceremony. Mickey Lolick had passed away. In Detroit, the moment felt personal. Like a familiar stadium light turning off after a long night. For many, his name was tied not just to baseball, but to resilience during a time when the city needed it most. Mickey Lolick was born in 1940, far from bright lights and headlines. He did not arrive in Major League Baseball as a star in waiting. He arrived as a worker. From the beginning, he was known for his strength, his stamina, and his willingness to take the ball whenever his team needed him. Lolick spent most of his career with the Detroit Tigers. He became the kind of pitcher managers trusted without question. He did not ask for rest. He did not avoid pressure. He stood on the mound with a calm face and a powerful arm, ready to carry the weight of the game. The defining moment of his career came in 1968. Detroit was a city under strain, facing social and economic hardship. That season, the Tigers reached the World Series. What followed became part of baseball history. Lolick pitched 3 complete games in the series, an almost unthinkable demand even then. Game 7 became his legacy. With everything on the line, he delivered a performance built on control, courage, and endurance. The Tigers won. And in that moment, Lolick became more than a pitcher. He became a symbol of strength for a city searching for hope. Teammates often said he never looked tired. He simply kept going. Mickey didn't talk much, one former Tiger recalled. He just showed up and did the job. That quiet reliability earned him deep respect inside the clubhouse. Lolick was not flashy. He did not chase attention. His leadership came through action. He believed the game was about responsibility, to teammates, to fans, and to the moment itself. That belief shaped how he played and how he was remembered. As the years passed, baseball began to change. Pitch counts replaced instincts. Endurance became rare. But Lolick's era remained a point of comparison. Fans and historians spoke of him as a reminder of a tougher, simpler time in the sport. After retiring, Lolick stepped away from the spotlight. He lived quietly, far from the stadium crowds that once cheered his name. Still, his impact never faded. Highlights of 1968 continued to play. Stories continued to be told. When news of his passing spread, tributes followed from across the baseball world. One fan wrote, "He didn't just win games. He carried a city when it needed him." Another former player shared, "Mickey Lolick showed us what loyalty looked like." His family released a brief statement thanking fans for their long support. They described him as a devoted husband, father, and grandfather. Baseball was important to him, the statement said, but family always came first. In Detroit, his name remains tied to a championship season that still brings pride. Younger fans may know him from history books. Older fans remember exactly where they were when he pitched those final outs. Mickey Lolick will be remembered as a workhorse in every sense of the word. A pitcher who asked for nothing but the chance to compete. A leader who spoke through endurance, not speeches. As time moves forward, his legacy stays rooted in effort, loyalty, and quiet strength. In the long history of baseball, his arm carried more than innings. It carried belief. And for a city that once leaned on him, that memory remains strong, steady, and deeply respected. The news was confirmed in a measured statement, delivered without urgency or drama. Lee H. Hamilton had passed away. In Washington, the moment felt quiet and reflective, like the closing of a long chapter in public service. For many, his name was linked not to headlines, but to moments when calm leadership mattered most. Lee H. Hamilton was born in 1931 and grew into public life with patience and purpose. He believed that democracy worked best when guided by restraint and trust. Early in his career, he chose a path of service over spectacle, focusing on steady progress rather than public attention. Hamilton represented Indiana in the U.S. House of Representatives for more than 3 decades. During that time, he became known as a thoughtful lawmaker and a careful listener. He approached politics as a responsibility, not a performance. Colleagues often described him as someone who asked questions before offering answers. In Congress, Hamilton played key roles on foreign policy and national security issues. He served as chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, where his calm approach helped guide difficult conversations. Even during tense moments, he spoke with balance and respect. His voice rarely rose, but it carried weight. Hamilton's influence extended beyond elected office. He was later called upon to serve on several historic national commissions. These included moments when the country faced uncertainty and division. In those settings, his role was often to bring clarity and fairness to complex investigations. One former colleague said, "Lee Hamilton believed the truth deserved patience." That belief shaped how he approached every task. He understood that accountability required time, care, and trust in the process. Hamilton never sought praise for his work. He often reminded others that democracy depended on cooperation. "The system works best," he once said, "when people put the country ahead of themselves." Those words reflected a lifetime of quiet commitment. As political culture grew louder over the years, Hamilton remained consistent. He spoke about the importance of listening across differences. He encouraged compromise, even when it was unpopular. To many, he represented a version of leadership rooted in respect and responsibility. After his passing, tributes came from leaders across the political spectrum. One former official shared, "Lee Hamilton was a steady hand in unsteady times." Another message read, "He reminded us that public service is about trust, not power." His family remembered him as a devoted husband and father, deeply grounded in his values. In a brief statement, they said he believed strongly in fairness and honesty. He loved this country, they said, and served it with humility. Hamilton also spent years mentoring young leaders and teaching about government. He believed knowledge was a duty to be shared. Through lectures and writings, he continued to shape public understanding long after leaving office. His legacy is not found in bold speeches or dramatic moments. It lives in the systems he helped strengthen and the example he set. He showed that leadership could be calm, that accountability could be fair, and that democracy required patience. As the nation reflects on his passing, Lee H. Hamilton is remembered as a quiet architect of trust. A man who believed in balance when it was hardest to find. His work continues in the principles he stood for, and in the reminder that steady service still matters. In memory and in history, his presence remains. Not loud, not fleeting, but enduring.